Have you ever felt a nudge, a whisper, a sense that something just isn't right? It's like your heart is trying to tell you something and you just can't ignore it. Your brain is telling you one thing, but your heart is feeling something else. Years ago, I had one experience that changed how I would ever see things again. I was 21 years old. It was a Friday night. I got home from work. It was about 7 p.m. and I was tired. And I just wanted to stay home. I started to make myself something to eat when my friends called me and they said they wanted to go out. Now, I really did not feel like going out that night, but they persuaded me. And as I was hurrying to get ready, I was getting something to eat. I dropped a glass on the floor and it shattered in pieces. As I was cleaning up the broken glass, I cut my finger. Now, my finger is starting to bleed. And I said to myself, I might have to miss going. Now, have you ever had a thought that made you stop and think, where did that come from? Because my next thought was, maybe I shouldn't go tonight. Now, I am not superstitious, but I had a very strong feeling when I said that. But I told myself in my mind, I am being overly cautious and just go. So I put a bandage over my cut and I got ready for the night. But as I was driving, I couldn't shake that thought that I had back at the house. It was like a small voice in the back of my mind whispering, something isn't right. But despite this feeling, I still decided to go out with my friends. We packed up our stuff, hopped in the car, and we set off for a night of fun. Now, as we were driving back home, it was late and there was a lot of fog and it was difficult to see. And I couldn't help but think back to that feeling that I had earlier, that I should have listened to my gut. Now, unfortunately, here is where our journey takes a terrifying turn. We were involved in a car accident. The impact was so severe that the vehicle rolled over several times and onto the embankment. Now, the miracle part of this story is that if that accident happened just a half a mile down the road, the embankment dropped off and there would have been little chance of survival. And thank God we all survived, just very bruised and really scratched. Now we had to get out through the window because the vehicle was upside down. And as I was getting out of the vehicle, I felt this pain in my hand. And as I looked down, I see a broken piece of glass that was stuck right where my cut was from earlier. I realized that that feeling that I had experienced earlier was way more than just a cut finger. What the world calls coincidence, God makes it significant. It was as if God himself was trying to tell me something. Now, you can call it a premonition or intuition, but I know that it was a sign from a higher power. In many of the Eastern cultures, this is referred to as the inner voice or the heart's voice. In Christianity, it's often connected with the Holy Spirit. But personally in my life, I have learned to trust that small voice as a powerful force to lead me through life's challenges and avoid major pain. And now, here's a history lesson about how listening to that voice can change the world. There was a peasant girl born in 15th century France, and from a young age, she claimed to receive heavenly visions and messages from the saints like Saint Michael and Saint Catherine. Now, most of the people mocked her and said she was out of her mind, and she was met with ridicule and judgment. However, her unwavering conviction and the prophetic nature of her visions eventually convinced Charles VII to actually listen to her. Now, these visions encouraged her to lead the French army against the English when no one else had the courage to. And even though she was just a teenager, Joan of Arc led the French army to several victorious battles. And I find this story so inspirational because it's more than just a history lesson about war. When you get to the core of who she was, it reveals a real person who became familiar listening to that inner voice. And that voice led her to a life of importance that is remembered throughout history. She was called crazy. Her faith was questioned. She was called a peasant girl that could never be worthy of a crown. And I know you have felt these thoughts of doubt thrown at you. But she chose to let the quiet voice of truth inside her speak louder than the outside. And her story points out what I didn't do on that terrifying Friday night. Trust my inner voice. And sometimes that voice might prompt you to leave the party early, stay home on a Friday night, or maybe take a leap of faith into something that scares you. And her story is a reminder that the quiet voice can have an incredible impact in your world if you're willing to listen to it and let it lead you. So the next time you feel a nudge, a whisper, or a sense that something isn't right, don't ignore it. Pay attention to your inner voice. It might be guiding you from a harmful event or even guiding you to your destiny. God has a plan for you, and sometimes those plans are communicated through the still, small whispers that only you can hear. And I'll see you next time on The Blank Check.